I wanted to start thank you very much. Hello everybody, welcome. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? I wanted to start by just sort of recapping some stuff that we've talked about before to set a bit of context for the next couple of days and the coming weeks and months about what we're doing and why we're doing it. We talked, there was some stuff like over the summer last year, the kind of State of the Union stuff, and that led to 3 action points that Dan was holding, which was to improve the kind of way that we do self-management, to roll out the kind of theoretical vision that we have for what self-management would look like, to be the practical reality of the company day to day and everything that we do, to build a clearer and stronger link between kind of strategic top-line thinking of the business and like execution, and make sure those things are kind of continually linked, and also to make the company intelligible, both to itself and to outside people, to say, look, these are the rules of the game, this is how things get done here, it's not all implicit and hidden, it's comprehensible to you, there's something that you can look at to understand it. And it's really with these kind of 3 aims in mind that we have come to the idea of running Holacracy within the business. So a few things that I think might be really helpful for you kind of as we get started on it. The first is to think that we're still headed towards self-management. I really think of Holacracy as a set of tools that we are using to help us advance the agenda of self-management, rather than like a rejection. We're not starting again, this is just the next hop. We know that the destination is self-management. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We have a kind of, intention for it, but the specifics of it we have to discover as we go along, because it's in the future, right? So we've taken a series of steps. This is just the next hop that we are taking. So we're continuing on the journey of self-management using Holacracy. And the reason why we're continuing using Holacracy is in order to bring greater clarity and structure to self-management and to the business. So I think the thing about Holacracy is it breaks down self-management into a kind of series of manageable structures, something that we found really difficult to do. Right, to say, okay, we know that, unlike reinventing organizations where there's this sort of sense in the book that everything just magically happens, you just take away all of the previous hierarchical management structure that you had, and self-management just magically happens. You don't need to explain it or structure it, it just occurs. And we know that that isn't the case. But we've not been able to find a way of saying, how do we put in place some structures that break this down into more manageable chunks? And for me, that's what Holacracy does. The other thing that it kind of brings clarity to is a shared model of the business. It allows us to understand what GrantTree is and isn't today. And that's a really vital part of the kind of self-management picture. In self-management, we want everybody to be able to take up that promise that we offer that anybody can make any decision, right? Anybody should be able to take action. But it turns out that, to quote Brian, who invented Holacracy, like if you don't know the limits of your freedom, you can't really experience it. Right? One of the things that Holacracy does by defining this shared model of the business is that it gives us a really clear sense of what is in play and what is out of play. So you know that if you want to do something and it's very clearly in play, you can just go ahead and do it. Right? You can move fast and with confidence. If you're near the edge, maybe you want to go a bit slower because you're actually not quite sure whether you're, inside or out. If you know that what you're doing is definitely outside the current bounds of play, you have the opportunity to stop and say, okay, do we want to flex the boundaries of what's in and out of play to accommodate it? For remote folks, I have drawn a small diagram. But I cannot tell you how useful I think that's going to be. Holacracy is about building this shared model and keeping it up to date so that we're all able to act faster. A few maps to hold on to as we start to get used to Holacracy. Remember this one? This is about the 2 games. Holacracy is like a complicated game. Here are the kind of, the game cards, right? You'll become familiar with these for the kind of core meetings. And if you think of it as being like a game, well then when it has its kind of bits of weirdness, you can maybe get some distance on that and think, hang on, it's okay, it's just a game. Or I don't understand it yet, but it's a complicated game and I'm still learning the rules. I find that really helpful. And I also want to remind you about the idea that it's like one of those games that's so complicated that it actually has two sections. Like, I think of this as being like the section where we're sort of at war, you know, and then the landscape has changed, and then the section when we are discharged from the army and then we go back as being kind of medieval peasants tilling the soil. But like, the fields that we're tilling have been changed by the war section. That's how it works. The bits that we're going to learn today, the core meetings, are game one. They're basically the things where we restructure the business. But the real game, the game that we spend most of the time playing, the kind of self-management game, is when we go out into that restructured business and we till the land. Right? So that's the real game. That's the main game that we're trying to win. This second game, which is the one that feels weird and involves the cards and is a bit odd, is really in service of this one. But once you start to get that first game, once those core meetings start to make sense of you, they're coaching you to think about the world in a certain way. And it's a way that's a bit weird, but it is a way that really, really serves the agenda of self-management. So stick with the weirdness. The other map that I find really helpful is to think about Holacracy as agile for organizations. Right? Everything happens incrementally. We're always trying to ship the minimum viable product, find the things that aren't working and change them. You know, so it's constant incremental change. That's the world that we're going to be in from now on. Another thing which you might find, and now a few things that you might find help. Yeah, those are a couple of maps that you might find helpful. Here are a couple of pieces of advice. Number one, right, the core value of GrantTree. Everybody is worthy. Compassion is how I think of that value. Over the coming weeks, as we're learning a new system, it's going to be easier for some people, harder for others. There's going to introduce some friction. Absolutely, it will be unavoidable. At some point, there will be some friction. Let's stick to our intention that we're so good at, to treat each other with respect and compassion as we learn. We're going to all learn at different speeds. And let's handle the tension when it happens with, you know, like open hearts. Also, for those of you who are, probably most of you are too young to know what the hell this is, but this is Bob Hoskins, who did a series of adverts for BT with the catchphrase, "It's good to talk." But I want to emphasise that it is good to talk. If you have any concerns or questions, or you're confused, or you just want to get something off your chest about the experience of Holacracy, come and talk to me, come and talk to Dan, come and talk to Pal. Keep things moving, don't bottle them up, and it may be that the things that are a problem for you are a problem for other people as well. So by, you know, kind of talking them through, we can maybe resolve them for the group and we can all move forward together. It's also, I think, going to be interesting for us to go through this process of implementing Holacracy. Not many people have done it in the UK. So I have set up an email address and an extension on the Bria system. Isn't that exciting? If at any point you have thoughts about what's going on for you that you just want to record for posterity, so that when in a year's time we look back on all of this and are like, great, now let's, you know, write a book about it and, you know, make some money off the back of that book or whatever, right? We have some archive material. I think it would be really interesting for us to document this stuff. Doesn't need to be long. If you have a couple of sentences that occur to you, you can ping it over there, or you can just dial in and say some stuff at any point. Yeah, that's my thoughts about Holacracy. Dan, do you want to add anything?
It feels like you kind of said everything already, but I'll try and add something. Do my best. Channel my inner smart ass and like come up with something else to say. Basically, like the main thing I want to say is that, like, for a lot of companies that are implementing Holacracy, it's like they have a hierarchical system. They have a kind of very rigid kind of processes. People do only like what they actually have asked for permission to do, and so for them it's like quite a big change to go to a system like Holacracy. And for me, it feels like we've been on this journey of moving towards Holacracy for like about 3 years or so. We started, I think, about 3.5 years ago by removing the link between management and people. And this is Kuhn, by the way. We started 3 years ago by removing the link between management and people doing the work. We removed all role descriptions. We just like removed all structure basically, and things continue to operate just fine. And then over the last 3 years, we've slowly experimented with adding structure back in. And so a lot of companies that go for implement Holacracy are starting with all this structure already in place, And so it's a very disruptive journey for them to remove all the structure and then put in place Holacracy, which adds just a little bit of structure. And I think that's what stumbles them quite a lot and like makes it very difficult because they have this 3-year journey compressed into a few weeks. For us, it feels like much more of an incremental step. It's like we've actually added some bits of Holacracy over the years. We didn't add the full thing, but basically we've been slowly adding structure back in over the last 3 years. And this is just a kind of next step of clarifying these structures and making them a bit more explicit and a bit more robust so that everyone knows how to use them rather than having this kind of vague, implicit understanding of how the company works. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this work. And yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. Did you say that already or?
No.
No? Okay, cool. So I managed to find something new to say. Great. Shall I hand over to the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, Koen Feldman.